Welcome to Season 5 of She Ventures. I am your host, Doria Lavanino. She Ventures is a podcast about women and their work and life pivots. I believe in the power of storytelling. I also believe that if you change one woman's life, you start to change a family or a community. Our mission is to elevate the diverse stories of everyday women in their work. One promise, no mansplaining ever. Sit back, listen, and hit subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at sheventurespodcast.com. She spent nearly a decade in corporate America and left a telecom sales job, earning nearly six figures, to delve into entrepreneurship. At first, she made many rookie mistakes that we all make as entrepreneurs, and then she discovered and became an expert in helping small business owners make six figures by winning government contracts. Here to share some of her secrets and what it took to get where she is today is CEO of She's Got Goals, a company that helps small business owners navigate the maze known as our government, although I'm sure she'll tell you otherwise, is Dr. Karwanna D. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great. Welcome to She Ventures. And before we went live or started our podcast, you were mentioning to me that you recently got a doctorate, which I did not even know. So let's just start there.
It's a huge goal and a milestone that I've always wanted to accomplish. And in 2022, I decided to just go for it, and I crushed it and got my doctorate, my PhD. I completed it. It's in business and Christian leadership, and I'm just so excited to be able to wear the title of Dr. Karwanna D. Irving. And I don't believe there's anyone that's doing what I do in my space that is a doctor and an expert at that level. It's just an honor to be able to achieve that.
It's exciting and it's great to have the example. How long did it take you? You said you got it in 2022. I would imagine, though, you had to study like for many years,
Yeah,
right?
I had to study for a couple years. So it took me 2 years actually to get it. I mean, I just completed the program in 2022. In fact, October. So it was a birthday present for me because my birthday is in October. About a week or so after my birthday, then I actually walked and got my doctorate degree. So I was proud. It was a proud moment for me.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is amazing and inspiring. And I've thought about going back for a PhD, and then I think about my two teenage daughters, and I just feel so tired at the prospect of it. But yeah, I think it's wonderful that you have the energy to do it. So going back a little bit to what we were talking about in the intro, you were working a 9-to-5 job for almost a decade, and you weren't making bad money at all, especially for someone in your then 20s. What prompted you to quit?
I want to say I was like one of the first young African-American women in my market that was making nearly six figures. So I was probably making about 80, 90,000 a year. And I probably could have hit six figures if I continued to work really, really hard. But it took me working 40 to 50, maybe sometimes 60 hours a week to be able to hit those numbers, which at that time is like, oh yeah, good pay, good benefits, all those different things. But because of like that work ethic and because I was working so tirelessly to hit those numbers, like I was really drained at the end of the day. And I had a daughter at the time, and she was young, 3 to 6 months old. And I remember never having time to really be there in the moment with her. Because, at that age, they grow so fast. They develop so quickly. So I was missing out on the first stand and the first words and, the crawling. And she started calling the babysitter mom and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh no, I'm staying away too long. So it was one of those things where I just really got tired of doing the same thing every single day, like getting up early, dropping the baby off, going to work, staying all day, coming home really, really tired, only to have enough time to play with her for 30 minutes before eating dinner and going to bed. I was like, is this it? Is this the American dream that we've all been chasing? This ain't it for me. That was the number one reason why I quit my job, because I wanted to really hone in on putting God first, family second, and then being able to have a thriving life and provide for my family. And so the only way to do that was to become an entrepreneur. I just didn't know how much being an entrepreneur was going to change my life at that time. But I knew that there was something there. I knew that that was something that I had to do. And so that was the number one reason why I quit. Not to mention that although my job at the time, it paid well and the benefits were good, and it was like one of the top communication firms in the world that I had the privilege of working for. But at the same time, I just got sick and tired of not being able to utilize all of my skills because I had college degrees back then. I would look on the side of me and it would be people who dropped out of high school at the same pay rate. I'm like, well, why do I have all of this money in student loans and I get to sit next to someone who didn't even complete high school and we're making the same amount of money? I felt like I was duped. I really wanted something better, and working for someone else just was not it for me.
I understand that so well. I understand so much of what you've said. I have had that moment myself where my first daughter called my babysitter mom,
Yeah.
and it stings a little bit, you know, even if at the time, you know, I did enjoy my job, that hurt. I'm glad she had good care, but yeah, it's tough, right? And you miss those firsts. I feel you there completely. And not to mention really not being in control of your own time. And then when you are there, you're like half zombie because you can't do it all. I mean, and do it well. At least that's what I found. You turned to entrepreneurship, but like everything in life, it wasn't like an immediate, like, oh, okay, we're going to do government contracting. Cool, let's go. Walk us through how many years it was and kind of how that worked in terms of, did you quit your job and focus solely on entrepreneurship? How did that go?
Initially, when I quit my job, I first had a clothing company. It was called Dyson Fashion Plus, and it was like a Christian clothing company. So I would go do vendor shows and like set up at churches, and it was a lot of work, especially with a little one. So that was a lot of work, having to carry all those clothes and set up bars and do all this stuff. But it was cool. You know, it didn't pay what I thought it would pay because there were high-end dresses and hats that I was selling. So it didn't really pay, but I did make a little bit of money doing it. But then from there I went to Mary Kay. Of course, I think everybody's first business was like a Mary Kay consultant. So I was a beauty consultant.
The pink limousine, right? Or whatever it is, the pink Cadillac.
The pink Cadillac, the ring, like all that stuff. So they have all these perks. But I think that journey of just trying something until you figure out what really works for you, that was very key for me because in Mary Kay, like I met a lot of amazing people, but I think that was the first time I understood what it meant to develop your mindset. Because they had all of these conferences where you just hear things that you've never heard. You're in a room full of people who think on a whole nother level. During those years, and I was probably in Mary Kay for like 2 or 3 years, during those years, although I didn't really make any money because I wasn't into asking people to buy stuff from me, but I learned a lot about who I was, like the greater identity within me. And I learned a lot about business excellence. That's what I learned. It helped me to know that there was more out there and to see that there was more out there than what I knew inexperienced in life. I didn't know that there were people making millions of dollars in these types of things. There are people who are like developing, writing books and like all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, you can do that, you know? So,
right.
And so it took me a few years. So I would say like 5 years in, I was like, what do I really want? I had a conversation with myself, like, I tried this, I tried that, I tried another MLM, and it's all this rah, rah, rah. And I learned a lot of things. I've met really amazing people, but it's like, what do I really want? And I started digging into my purpose. And I'm like, oh, I went to school for mass communications, and which is like video production and television production. And I was always really passionate about that. So I started a video production company and I was like, that's it. When I look back over my life, all I've ever done was be in front of a camera, get behind a camera, interview people, celebrities, and all those things. And so I just started doing it in business. When I started my production company, I did not know about government contracts. And so even with that, there was a struggle for a couple years.
I was going to say, I think people just have no idea the amount of effort and time and cost that a B2C business, it kills you because you just, unless you have some kind of notoriety somehow on your own, to begin with. It's like you are lost, especially today, in a maze of noise.
Yeah. Well, so when I started my company, I didn't know anything about business at the time. I mean, I had a little bit of experience, but like you said, I thought that, okay, we're going to build a business from a bootstrap and work our way up because of all the stories and things that you hear in the media. Well, that's just the way it is. So you're just supposed to struggle from the ground up. I didn't know that you can actually start a business highly profitable if you do it the right way. I didn't know that yet, but so I did it all the wrong way. I chased customers. I barely made ends meet. I worked really, really hard. So all I did was quit a job to create a job for myself that didn't make any money, but it gave me some perks here and there, right? That wasn't it for me. I'm like, this can't be it either, right? I'm like,
right.
I love what I do, but how do I figure out how to make money doing what I do? Especially when you don't come from money. My credit was shot. I didn't have business credit. I didn't know anything about that. I couldn't get a loan from the bank, so it's like, how do you market yourself to really be competitive? Like, how do you get yourself off the ground? Well, there wasn't a way to do that, like working backwards. And so that's when I started asking questions and I started freelancing for higher end entrepreneurs, like high level entrepreneurs who were like already millionaires, billionaires, right? And I just start asking them, like, what are you doing? How did you do it? Did you start like this? One particular entrepreneur, he was a multi-billionaire, and I had known him from the community. And I'm like, how did you go from hood to millions and billions of dollars? How did you do that? And so he said, well, I sell to the government. And he said, it took a really good serious look at me because I was freelancing and building his portfolio with videos and photography and building his website. He's like, the same thing you're doing for me, you can do for the government and land lucrative contracts. He's like, in fact, they would love you because you're an African-American and you're a woman. Like, they would love you. So I said, you can sell to the government? Like, you're thinking war weapons, you're thinking go to war and army suits and, like all that stuff. I'm like, you can do that? That's when everything began to click. That was the very first time that I had heard that a regular person can sell to the government. And so from there, everything changed.
That's when you really began to focus in on what that meant. Going back just a second, though, how did being a mother impact your decision to become an entrepreneur?
Number one, time. I think for me, I wanted to buy back my time. I didn't know how to do that, but I knew that entrepreneurship was going to be the way for me to be able to spend the time that I needed with my baby without having to leave her for extended hours of the day while I'll go work for someone else. So being a mom gave me the strength and the desire to want to go figure it out. And some kids grow up and like, well, you were never there. Especially for when people work really hard for other people. They're like, you were never really there. If you hear that and you work really hard for somebody else, you're like, wow, I guess I was busy providing for you, right?
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
I was there. You have clothes. I sent you to college. I took care of you and all those things. But it's the moments that you miss. You're not able to attend field trips and not able to be there, be on the parent advisory board. And like those intimate moments make a huge difference when you're going to the games and you're showing up. It does make a huge difference than just being a provider. And so for me, that's how being a mom impacted my decision to go ahead and figure out entrepreneurship. Because nobody just jumps into it knowing it all, unless you had a coach. Nobody jumps into it knowing it all. It's definitely a field where you learn as you go, but you have to be willing to keep going even when you bump your head.
Oh, and you will bump your head many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that for sure. So I looked up the most recent figures from the Small Business Administration. I know there are trillions of dollars, but there was 154.2 billion was awarded to small businesses in 2022, which was more than they had earmarked. That's a lot of money just in and of itself that they have to spend. You talked about your epiphany. You were speaking with this guy. He was like, this is how I do it. What did you do next? Did you start to research it?
Yeah, so I started researching it. And what I found was like I started looking up the numbers and the statistics and trying to figure out how it worked. It took me I would say a little over a year to really make sense of contracting with the government. I didn't know like how it really worked. Nobody knows how it works, especially if you're trying to do it on your own. It's just, I started finding out like about PTAC, which is the Federal Procurement Technical Assistance Center, where they're paid to like kind of help you through the process. But even that, it's a free program. Even that, their employees, they don't know really about government contracts. All they can do is tell you is do this paperwork and do this. And they just like
right.
throw a bunch of darts, right? So I went through that resource. I went through the SBA resource. I went through SCORE resource, and I still couldn't figure it out. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go do it. And I did it backwards. Like, I was like, I don't care if I do it wrong. I'm going to do it wrong until I get it right. And that's really how I learned it. I was doing it wrong. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, here, throw this over here and just throw it. I didn't have time to go try to piece together a little bit of information from over here and a little bit of information from over there, and then try to learn from employees behind the desk who's not in the field doing it. I started asking people in the field who were doing it, what did you do? How did you get there? And then I just started trying to do it myself. And then I looked at all the wrong pieces that were coming back, and I'm like, okay, well, let me tweak this and do this and do that. It didn't begin to make sense to me because I was actually doing it and doing it wrong. I think John Maxwell says it the best. He talks about failing forward. When you fail forward, you don't just fail and say it didn't work. Well, you fail and you learn from your mistakes, and you get up and you continue to do it again and make tweaks until you get there. And so that's how I learned. I learned it by making all the mistakes. So now I'm an expert at making all the mistakes, and I know how to do it correctly. This is how now I'm able to coach people and say, don't do it that way because here's why. Because I did it wrong. When I finally got it right, I looked at all the things that I did that first time. I said, looks like I got something here, right? And then I did it again, and I landed my first contract. It was $70,000 for 28 days of work on a multi-trillion-dollar project, and it was simply because I just happened to be a woman and a minority. That's how I got a piece of that pie.
What were you doing? Was it video work?
So it was video production and it was photography work. So they were like, well, can you take pictures? Yeah, same thing. It's the same world. Video is nothing more than a bunch of pictures put together in multiple frames, right? So like, yeah, I can take pictures. So I didn't know anything about ISO. I didn't know anything about aperture and all this expert about lenses and none of that. I just knew that I could just point and click. So I did that. And so that's exactly what I did. It was one of the most amazing experiences being on a multi-trillion-dollar project. So now I can say I have that under my belt. Well, I didn't win a multiple trillion-dollar contract, but I performed on a multi-trillion-dollar project and I got a piece of that pie. And getting a piece of the pie, like $70,000 to me for 28 days when I was working 60 hours, 70 hours a week to make 80 or 90, that was a game changer for me. And so I did it again, and I landed another contract simultaneously. It was like $60,000. I did it again. I landed another contract. It was like another $70,000. Before I knew it, I was simultaneously making multiple six figures for minimum work, minimum part-time work. Like I was like on a project maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. And I was making that type of money, and it was like complete game changer because when you cross over from being an entrepreneur, you're thinking exchange time for dollars, right? When you're an employee, you think exchange time for dollars. So every hour you get paid. When you become an entrepreneurship, if you bring that over, you can easily get yourself into another job and work really hard and not be making a limited amount of money.
Yeah, with no benefits.
But when you're doing business, exactly. But when you're doing business with a government who is a premium buyer, in fact, they're the number one biggest purchaser of business products and services in the world, and you will learn that. It's a complete game changer. You're no longer exchanging time for dollars because the time does not add up to the amount of money that will flow through your business, right? First year doing government contracts and landing them successfully, I probably made like a little over $200,000 working less than like 6 months out of the year. I'm like, well, how did that happen? And we're talking about photography work. So that's like 2 hours a day at most. I bought my time back. And to me, that was freedom. Do people know about this? I was so blown away by how powerful that was for me. Not only can I provide for my kids, but I can be there for my kids. I can put God first, family second, and then also make really great money doing what I love. Do people know about this? I'm like, and I'm Googling government contracts, how to, and it's like, no information. Nobody connects the dots. It's a bunch of overwhelm out there on information. And I'm like, this is amazing. So this is why I coined it the $1 trillion secret to government contracts. So years ago, I coined it that because it's a secret. I'm like, I'm going to make the commitment to tell everybody that I know about government contracts. And so that's how I jumped into the space of coaching others.
Incredible. And I want to touch on, because so many entrepreneurs that I know are creative entrepreneurs, writing, design, video. And I listened to a podcast where you were talking about a certain website, I think it's NAICS, where I'll be honest with you. I went on it myself and I was like, oh, I'm going to look up editorial. And I immediately was like, oh my God, what is this? And I became overwhelmed. And then I tried telecommunications. And then it was like talking about all different
types of telecommunication.
Yeah. And like putting stuff together. And I was like, no, that's not what I meant. So there's a lot to it, I think, right?
There's definitely a lot to it. Number one is you have to know what you're going to sell to the government. There's a different language that the government speaks about the services that they purchase. Although you may sell, some people say, well, I'm a mindset coach. Well, what do you do? Because the government doesn't call it that.
Right.
What do you help people accomplish? Well, I help them become more financially literate. Well, that's called financial consultation on the government side, or finance management or something like that. The NAICS code, keyword lookup, NAICS.com. So if you go to NAICS.com, you can actually try to find the translation between what you do and what the government calls it. When you go through there and you find like these codes that are connected to the service, well, every code that's connected to the service has a pool of money. So the government has committed and dedicated a budget of money to spend on all of those different types of services. And so the more codes you identify, the more buckets of money you can potentially participate in, especially with the mandate being the Small Business Act mandates that the government is obligated to spend a certain percentage of all of their spend with small businesses. And there's so many different types of small business concerns. There's women in small business, there's minorities in small business, there's local small businesses, there's disadvantaged small business, there's micros, there's all of these different categories, veterans. That's why it's key for you to really understand what it is that you have to sell so that you can find the code. You find the code, you find where the money is, and you want to follow the money.
Amen to that. Government or not. So how does one find, is it an RFP, like a request for proposal thing that the government puts out? Or is it, I don't know, that you pitch your services to them? How does that work?
So I'm going to back up a little bit, because a lot of times people think that because you have a business that the government is automatically going to give you money because you know it exists. Well, it doesn't work like that. Ideally, I have 4 steps that I train my clients. There's 4 steps to getting started before you can even get to the money, right? So there's a business foundation. That's the step 1. Well, you have to align your business to become qualified to do business with the government. Your business has to be legitimate. You have to have all of your documentation in order and all of that before you can even consider doing business with the government. The second one is there's all of these different socioeconomic disadvantaged groups that you can identify with. Well, you have to get certified under those groups in order to participate in that special spending, right? So you don't have to have certifications to do business with the government, but certifications gives you leverage to access contracting opportunities that are specifically set aside for socioeconomic disadvantaged groups. So it's like getting a fast track pass to skip the line.
How long does that take typically, the certification?
It depends on the agency. So it can take up to 90 days. Some of them are faster than others. So it depends on the agency, how quickly they turn it around. But the federal certification only takes 10 days. But when it comes to the state and the local, it can take up to 90 days. So it just kind of depends.
My other question I wanted to follow up with is, do you have to be profitable in order to work with the government as a business?
So there's 2 more steps there. After being certified, there's the marketing part. So you have to market yourself to the government, and then you can get to the proposals. So I call it the BCMP, business model for government contracting. Now, most people ask the same question. Do you have to be making money to do business with the government? And absolutely, you do not. Sometimes people mistake that you have to be 2 years in business because you have to have 2 years of taxes. Some people automatically equate that with having to be in business for 2 years and having to have revenues for 2 years, right? All of that is just made up information. You don't have to be making any money to do business with the government. You just have to have a legitimate business, which is step 1. And you can be making $1. In fact, small business government contracting is strategically designed for those who are truly small businesses. So if you've made nothing, that means you are a highly qualified candidate. You just have to get your business paperwork in order to go ahead and get started.
Fascinating. So fascinating. The government, as we talked about, once a company becomes certified, how does a business find out about government work? How does someone work with you? How does that work?
So before I get there, you did mention the question about RFPs and all those different things. So
Yeah. How does that all work?
So in that 4th phase, right, the proposal process, there are all different types of opportunities out there. There are RFPs, which stands for requests for proposals. There's RFIs, which is requests for informations. And ideally, there are RFQs, requests for quotes or qualifications. So those are the three major types of opportunities. The government posts those all the time across all of their websites. And all you have to do is pretty much respond to them. Because I know there's so many people who can benefit from this. In fact, because government contracting changed my life so drastically, I believe that every small business entrepreneur should be doing this. I created a blueprint, a step-by-step blueprint to show them step-by-step. This is how you do it successfully so that you're not bumping your head. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to spend years on Google trying to tape together free program. It's not going to work. If you become an excellent premium entrepreneur and you attract who you are, right? You will attract a premium purchaser like the government and like corporations who have similar programs. All you have to do is show up for yourself. So you have to be willing to invest in education so that you can have expert knowledge to bridge the gap to get there faster. That is my recommendation for everyone. It could take you 10 years trying to figure it out on your own. And in the 10 years, you're potentially missing out on $1 million a year. So that's 10 million. Or you can invest in a coach who can show you how to get there in 3 to 6 months. One of the things that I learned in business is that it doesn't take 5 years, like we've been told, to build a business, to be profitable, 2 to 5 years. It does not take that. You could be highly profitable in 3 to 6 months or within your first 12 months if you're doing business with the number one biggest purchaser of business products and services in the world. Now, we're talking about potentially tapping into $1 million a year. The money is there. All you have to do is get in place. And so for people to work with me, I always try to take them through the pre-qualifications phase first. So I have a challenge. It's called GovCon Challenge. It's a 5-day experience where I walk you through. It's an immersion experience where I walk you through what it is to become a qualified government contractor, and you walk away pre-qualified. You can find information about that at govconchallenge.com. So if you go there, you can actually get registered, and we try to have them once a month. But we're helping people, ordinary people who've never done government contracting before, or people who are like high-level entrepreneurs, ready to take their 6-figure business to multiple 6 figures or 7 figures, or even 8 figures potentially. We're helping them get pre-qualified to do business with the government. Like, this is a serious entity. This is a serious client who has money that you don't have to beg them for. They're already saying, come get it. Here it is. Like, I've set it aside for you. All you have to do is understand the steps. And so I actually use government contracting as a way, especially for Black and brown communities and who are entrepreneurs, to get their reparations, because you have the potential to become the first generation millionaire, multiple millionaires. For women, for the first time, to become millionaires. I think that's very important, especially for women entrepreneurs to become millionaires. Like, it's your birthright to become a millionaire. Like, the money is there. It's not our birthright to become struggleers, like to be making, $30,000, $20,000 a year in business, working full time. That's not how entrepreneurship works.
There are a few things that you've said, right, that so resonate with me. Number one, like, the government has to spend that money every year or they lose it. So they don't want to lose it. So they want to spend it. That's so key, number one. Number two, as I'm sure you're well aware, we're sold this idea that, to your point, that businesses have to seek venture capital or have to get angel capital, or you have to have friends and family that can write like a $5,000, $10,000 check, all this crazy stuff. And that's how we're taught to do business. But I will say the women of color that I have had on my show primarily have bootstrapped their business. And I don't even know if it's necessarily by choice because of the statistics. There being such paltry venture capital that's given to women of color. And so this avenue is so exciting.
Exactly. And so I say society has programmed all of us. We've all been programmed, and we've been sent through programming. Elementary school, middle school, high school, it's all to program you to think normal. You've been programmed not to be an entrepreneur, think for yourself, but to follow instruction and work for someone else, right? And so, in fact, the educational institution was designed by the Vanderbilts. It was designed because of the warehouses that they had back in the day, and they wanted workers to work in the warehouses. And so that's why the educational institution was designed, was to create modern day slaves, which is called workers and employees, right? Because we've been programmed all of our life, we've all been programmed. When you watch TV, you're being programmed. All the commercials on television is programming us. We've been programmed to bootstrap our way, to look for venture capital, thinking that It takes
Suffer.
3 to 5 years to build. Yeah. And it does not work that way. And so if you really do your research, the smartest, most brilliant, most successful people in life, in fact, they skipped the indoctrination schools and became multiple millionaires by starting entrepreneurs. So every successful person who built and created millions of dollars for generations to come, they didn't do it by going to college. They didn't do it by working for someone else. They did it because, and I have nothing against the educational institution at all. I mean, I have degrees myself, but what I'm saying is we have to open our minds and we have to educate ourselves. And you have to start a business to create wealth. In fact, starting a business is the only way to create wealth. So if you already have a business, you're well on your way. You just have to learn how to do it the right way. All of the things that we've been programmed to believe, like we believed that Christopher Columbus discovered America and that was a lie. All those things like that we believe, we have to uneducate that part of ourselves and learn the truth. And there's a scripture that talks about the truth shall set you free. And it really does, because it allows you to be able to grow and expand and learn new things and go to higher heights. Like I remember before jumping into entrepreneurship, my goal, when I first jumped into entrepreneurship, my goal was to be able to make $5,000 a month. Like for me, I was like, I make $5,000 a month. I'm good. My bills are paid. I can provide for my children. So we're programmed to think so small. I had no clue that you can make multiple six figures in a single day. And I've been able to do that with government contracting. I've been able to leverage my skills and my expertise as a video producer and a photographer to be able to bring home multiple six figures for one day of work. That is so powerful to me, right? And so all the things that I learned, I had to unlearn in order to get there. The money is there. You just have to be willing to do the work to get there. It's not for free and it's hard work, especially when you're unlearning something that 40 years, like I'm 40, like it took you 40 years to learn this thing. Now you have to switch. Sometimes people are not willing to grow in that way because it challenges everything that they believe, their belief system.
And it's a risk.
And it's a risk. And so you have a lot of people that they're like, is this real? Like, yeah, it's really real. It's really real. Look at Amazon. Amazon has a government contract. Look at Uber. Uber has a government contract. Look at Elon Musk. Well, wow. Elon Musk has a government contract. The Space Center. So can you not see that now for the first time in history, people like you, ordinary people like you and me, who once maybe struggled, who once maybe lived in the hood or urban communities, who once maybe couldn't afford to buy milk and put it in a refrigerator, who once probably had to collect coins to put it in the gas tank just to get home down the street. We've all been there. For the first time in history, we get to align ourselves to do business with a government who can change that for you, who can help you create generational wealth. That is so powerful. If more people get this and understand that doing business with the government is life-changing and that your business can be a vehicle for you to create wealth and not for you to just make a little bit of money and be happy with that, wealth, generational wealth, something that you can pass down and educate your children about. And then they can pass down and educate their children about. And then they can pass down and educate their children about. That is where the game changer comes in. We have to get more financially literate about how to do this the right way. And doing business with the government and corporations, and they have all this money, it helps you create generational wealth.
And at the end of the day, I think women, in order for us to change our situation, it takes economic power. Sure, conversations and storytelling, yes, it's all important. But like at the end of the day, you've got to be able to support other women with what you've learned.
And just imagine, more women are becoming millionaires for the first time by landing government contracts. So instead of doing marches for equality and all those different things, well, now you have that economic power to be able to do some things and make some real change and be the change maker in your community, because it does take money. And I always say it takes money to make money, and it really does. Like at first I was like, no, really, maybe it won't take money to make money. Maybe I could just do it the hard way and do it all myself instead of hiring an expert to do it. Well, when you hire an expert to do it, you get there faster and you actually make more money. That's what I learned.
It makes so much sense. So how long is your program?
So the program right now is a 90-day program. In fact, within that 90 days, you learn the exact blueprint to getting started with government contracting. And so this is the premium program. Once you become pre-qualified, we take applications into the premium program, but it's a 90-day program. And in the program, we have people that are landing contracts within their first 4 to 5 weeks. It's unheard of And it's not the norm, but it can happen. We have people that are landing contracts within their first 90 days, within their first 6 to 9 months, within their first year. And we're not talking about a little bit of money. We're talking about $250,000 contract for the first time. We're talking about $1 million contract secured within your first 30, 60, 90 days, like life-changing. And it's easy to do that.
What would you say is the hardest thing about working with the government?
Well, in my book, so I have a book. It's called Don't Duck the Government. They've got your money.
You have more than one, don't you? Do you have another one?
I have more than one. So I have another book. It's about the 10 habits of the highly effective entrepreneur. So that's a book that's available on Amazon. So it just talks about work ethic and the habits you have to create to become the person to succeed in government contracting, the mindset part. And then the Don't Duck the Government book is all about pitching and winning government contracts. So this one is about how to make millions pitching and winning government contracts. And it talks about all of those things about doing business with the government, how it works, the agencies, like what they're expecting, what the laws are that govern why they have to pay you these funds. Because the more you know about these things, the more you can leverage it to get access and to get ahead in your business. So, yeah.
Can I ask how much it costs to work with you?
So it depends. It depends on the business. It depends on where you are in business. But there is a range. We are a premium brand. But for the challenge, I would say to get pre-qualified, which is the first step to working with us, it's only $97. It's $297 if you want to be able to join us backstage to listen in on questions that are being asked. $297 to be able to get pre-qualified. GovConChallenge.com, you will go there. In fact, don'tduckthegovernmentbook.com is where you want to get a copy of the book, because I know some people probably are like, well, where do you get the book? Now they're going to ask that. Where do you go get the book? And then from there, we do accept applications into our premium program. So the price kind of ranges, depends on where you are in your business, and it depends on what we're offering at that time. Typically, we do offer scholarships as well. When you go through the challenge, there's going to be a special offer just for you at that time.
Would it be fair to assess that, like, you base your fee somewhat on when you say where the business is at? Like, if a company has no earnings, but you're going to help them win a government contract,
it's not really like a sliding scale. So here's the thing about that. So it's a mindset thing, because most people that are like, well, I don't have any money, so you can't expect something for free, right? Because we're going to teach you how to make $1 million in your first year. We'll give you the blueprint on how to do that. Ideally, you want to think, okay, well, 10% is biblically what they say to invest in your business. 10% of what you could potentially make. Well, it's not going to cost you $100,000 to work with us. So just so you know that. But in fact, it's not going to even cost you half. It's not going to even cost you half of that. But what we do offer at the moment, and the reason why I'm not saying a particular price is because we always have specials. And we always offer scholarships, partial scholarships as well. But we do know that whatever the investment is going to be, you will 10x that and beyond within your first year. It's an investment for you to 10x and then beyond continue to make millions of dollars in government contracts.
From what you're saying and looking at it from your perspective and what you've done, the 10x versus the college debt. And again, I have nothing against college either, but it's like, I know a lot of people who pay to get degrees that they then don't even know how to use.
Hello, that's me. I've been there.
Me too.
Over $200,000 in student loan debt. I'm talking about master's degree, bachelor's degree, then the PhD. Like that's a lot of money for something that I don't even use and never have used in the industry. But I've made more money in my business than ever, and I've made zero from my college degree. But yet, ideally, we've been programmed to think the American dream is to graduate from high school, go to college, get that debt that you're going to own for life, right? And then hope that you can get a job to work for someone else, which you'll never make enough money to pay off that loan. But we do that crazily. But when you tell someone to invest in their business, you're going to be able to 10x that within your first year. They're like, oh, some people are just really stuck there. They don't really get that. But here's the thing. There's a cost for not doing business with the government that people don't see. That's the invisible cost. It's called the opportunity cost. You could potentially generate $1 million a year as a small business. We're talking about a micro small business working less than part-time. If you could potentially earn $1 million a year, if you are currently making, let's say, $20,000, that's $980,000 a year that you're missing out on, times however many years you're in business. There's your millions right there. By not doing business with the government, it's cost you a lot more than it will cost for you to invest in something to help you 10x your investment. And then beyond that, continue to make millions for the life of your business.
Once someone is a part of your program, do you update it? And like, are they a part of it for life? How does that work?
So it's a 90-day program, actually. After the 90 days, they get continued access to the content that they've learned. They'll get access to that, but they don't get access to me after the 90 days. Now, this past cohort that we had, we extended them an additional 90 days in the hub. So it's like a 6-month period. We do specials here and there, but it's a 90-day program where you actually get live group coaching. And then if we're just happy to run that special, we'll give you an additional 90 days to get coaching from me. But if you want to kind of re-up, then we have a phase 2 where you can continue to get coaching. But of course, there's a small continuation monthly fee to access that.
What tips can you give women who are starting as entrepreneurs outside of government contracting, of course, just characteristics or things that you've learned about being a woman in business or a woman of color in business?
One of the things that I learned in business is you have to advocate for yourself, because a lot of times we go as a woman, we go in really soft and timid and we don't really know our worth. It's like you have to really understand who you are, what you have to offer, and the value that you're bringing to the table, and demand respect on what you're asking for, like the pricing. So a lot of times you're like, oh, well, I just want to just charge like $10 an hour. No, baby, when it comes to government contracting, like I have a client, her name is Kim, and she teaches diversity trainings, inclusion to the government. For 1 hour of work, she landed a $23,000 contract.
Incredible.
She knows her worth. So you have to know your worth.
I was just thinking about that. Like, obviously she had to prepare for it, but I was like thinking per minute of that hour, like that is a lot of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. You just have to really know your worth and really develop yourself and invest in you. Investing in myself, like I didn't just grow to this Dr. Karwanna D overnight. Like I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaching to help me expand my mind so that I can go after opportunities that I didn't think was possible. One of the coaches that I actually been working with over the past year and a half now has expanded my mind so much to the fact that I never even knew that it was possible. And I'm surrounded by multimillionaires and billionaires. Like I didn't know that people were making $1 million in a day. So now that's my goal. $1 million in a day. Like you would never think that, right? And I'm like, I'm
Good
halfway there.
Look at you.
But with government contracting, it allowed me to be able to potentially put myself in that type of position. But I had to invest in myself in order to expand my mind to that belief level.
That you can do it.
That I can do it, that was possible. And so that's what I would say for women that are, whether or not you're getting into the government contracting or just starting a business or just period in life you want to grow. Remember to invest in yourself. That is the number one biggest gift that you can ever give to yourself. And the other thing is like, a lot of times I get, women that are like, oh my God, you're so amazing. And I'm like, you're amazing too. You just have to give yourself permission to be great and to operate in your gifts and to operate at that level of perfection. You can do it. Like, what do I do? How do I start a business? And I say, start with your gifts. So there's a song by J. Moss. So he's a Christian singer, and he talks about, if I was a doctor, I would use my instruments. If I was a drummer, I would use a cymbal. If I was a singer, I would use my voice. So it's like, it tells me like, whatever your gifts are, you want to use that. So if you're really good at cleaning, start a janitorial business. If you're really good at cooking, start a catering business, because the government buys those things too. If you're really good at drawing, become an artist, because the government buys art. You just have to start from whatever your gifts are and operate in that, because your gift will absolutely make room for you and will also pay you very well if you're selling that gift to the right entity.
This has been so inspirational for me. You've got me completely ready to roll. I'm ready to go. And it's so you're halfway to your goal. My question was going to be, what are your professional goals in 2023? Is it to get to $1 million a day?
That's a personal goal. It's not a professional goal. My professional goal really is to help. In 2023, I want to help another 100 women in business become first generation millionaires. That's my goal, is to help, because if I continue to help other people, I'm always going to achieve everything that I want. That's just by law. The more you give, the more you receive. And so helping others and serving others, in fact, because when it comes to government contracting, you're not just working for someone, you're working for yourself, but you're serving the government. And servitude is where abundance is released because of your service, right? And so for me, I want to continue to service women in business so that I can have a global impact on the communities, because I know women are the nurturers. Women are the ones who have solutions to a lot of problems that are happening in our communities and all those things. So if you can help a lot more women become financially, economically more powerful, then that will impact our communities as a whole. That is my goal, is to reach 100 women and impact their lives.
I love it. And it's so true. Change a woman, change a community, or change a woman, change a family, change a community, right? And it's just, it gets so big. Where can listeners, I know you have a lot of different websites, which we will definitely put in our show notes. Where can listeners learn more about you and how to work with you?
I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Karwanna D. You can follow me on YouTube. It's Karwanna D Speaks on Instagram. If you're looking to get pre-qualified, if you want me to help you get pre-qualified for government contracting, which is a great place to start, especially for those who don't even have a business yet, like, you will learn how to build your business during this challenge, right? The right way, so that it is profitable, not in 3 to 5 years, but 30, 60, 90 days. And so you go to govconchallenge.com, get yourself registered. We'll help you get pre-qualified. And from the pre-qualifications, we extend the offer for you to apply to work with us in our premium program.
It has been such a pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you for being so authentic and inspiring.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to She Ventures. Like what you heard? You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a show.